A very pleasant good afternoon as we welcome you into the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here at Quaker Steak Lube, our home away from home on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. We invite you to come on down, enjoy some great food, great company, great service, and great beverages to boot. And on a day like this, that is a welcome opportunity. And Quaker Steak and Lube, our longtime hosts here, really from the inception of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Chris Buganani will be filling in for the Dear Goon. He's up taking in some of the championship baseball action today at Medler Field at Lebrano Park in the first game of the day, the AA championship between Bald Eagle Area and Tri-Valley. And it is Bald Eagle Area winning the championship. Bald Eagle Area just down the road from our location here this afternoon at Quaker Steak and Lube, about a 10-minute drive, maybe 15 to the high school. And congratulations to Bald Eagle Area, back-to-back PIAA state champions, and just an unbelievable senior class. I mean, congratulations, obviously, to the entire team. But 8 seniors, 6 in that starting lineup for Bald Eagle Area, and those guys really led the way here for a second straight state championship for Bald Eagle Area. So again, congratulations to the Bald Eagle Area Eagles on a job very well done. And a huge thank you to Todd and Norm Brown, who just did fantastic work throughout the season. Great call of the championship game today. And again, Bald Eagle Area wins back-to-back titles. First time in program history that they've won back-to-back titles. Of course, that's an uncommon feat for any program in any sport. And very special stuff there by the Bald Eagle Area baseball team today, again, defeating Tri-Valley, really pulling away. It was a 1-1 game, and then the Eagles, as they've been doing all season long, I was going to say all postseason long, but they just put together actually back-to-back big innings, put up, I believe it was a 5 spot and then a 4 spot in the 4th and 5th innings. And the Eagles cruised to the 11-3 victory today over Tri-Valley. So again, congratulations to Bald Eagle Area. And we have on one of the TVs in front of us here at Quaker Steak and Lube, the beloved Buccos wrapping up that series in St. Louis, and Pittsburgh at the moment trailing 2-0 to the Redbirds after a tough loss last night. Pirates won the opener, of course, in that terrific pitchers duel between Skeens and Michaelis. And Buccos, again, right now down 2-0 in the top of the 4th in St. Louis. Baseball and softball championships are continuing on the Penn State campus. Busy weekend here in PIAA state championship action on the Penn State campus. Again, softball and baseball championships, 6 divisions, Class A through Class 6A in both baseball and softball. So 3 games today in each, and then 3 more games tomorrow in those title games. And then on Saturday, it'll be the lacrosse championships over at Panzer Stadium. And the boys volleyball championship will also be decided at Rec Hall. So lots of exciting action on that front. Also, did want to make note that here on Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox, we will have a live coverage of the Lesser Lumber Football Classic coming up on Sunday here. That is always a whole lot of fun. This year it'll be at Memorial Field in State College. 5 o'clock kickoff on Father's Day this Sunday as the North takes on the South. The North will feature the Center County representatives in this year's game and should be a lot of fun. Again, we'll have live coverage of that starting just a little before 5 here on Sunday on Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox. So lots of local action going on here with our station and throughout the area. And again, good luck to all the teams advancing to the state championship. Just getting to the state championship and being able to play on that stage is a pretty special opportunity for all of those young guys and gals. And oh my gosh, did O'Neal Cruz just hurt himself? Again, watching the Buccos here. And he's kind of hobbling back after making it out. I couldn't tell if the ball went off. Yeah, I think it went off of his right foot there. Off of the bat and into the foot, I think, is what happened there with O'Neal Cruz. So keep an eye on that as the Buccos continue. Also, the U.S. Open is underway, and first round action continuing. Tiger Woods had a terrific start today on hole one, and actually saw a few different media outlets point out that, yes, Tiger Woods had the lead at the U.S. Open, albeit for one hole, but he was atop the leaderboard after making a birdie. Unfortunately, I think just one more birdie, if I'm not mistaken. 2 birdies on the day, but 6 bogeys, and so he is 4 over in the tournament. And again, first round play is continuing in the U.S. Open, and a challenging course for sure. Just watching, I don't even know who that was, try to get out of the tall grass, and that is really tall grass that he just played out of. All right, a few things we can get into today on the Penn State sports scene and the football program. James Franklin meeting with the media this afternoon. A lot of, I think this is not a bad position this year for Penn State and James Franklin to be in, where I don't think the expectations are quite as high as they were, let's say, a year ago. Now, still high, and I think you want them high. You don't want nobody paying any attention. But I think most, even Penn State fans, most diehard Penn State fans would still concede that going into this season, Ohio State is the team to beat, and probably Oregon is the number 2 team. That's a pretty general consensus. And then Penn State maybe heads up the next group that maybe could challenge those 2 teams. I don't think that's a bad spot to be in if you're James Franklin and Penn State, because you're not completely under the radar, but you're under the radar of national championship scrutiny. Last year, nationally it was probably much the same, but locally it felt like the expectations were higher. I think this season, most Penn State fans will be content, not rejoicing, but content with a playoff appearance. Now, we've talked before as Chris Buchanani joins us, the Deer Booch.
Hey, hello, everybody.
Today.
Yep.
I do think there's, as always, some layers to this. If Penn State does host a game at Beaver Stadium in those playoffs and then loses that game, again, there's going to be some nuance there. Who's the opponent? What did it look like? All of those things come into play. But I think it'll add another layer of disappointment, even though you made the playoffs.
Yeah, I can't think of. So if Penn State is hosting a playoff game this year, they probably went at bare minimum 11-1, right?
Yes.
So it's possible that you could go 11-1 and even lose the Big Ten championship game and still be hosting a playoff game, because it all depends on who's ranked wherever else.
I think that's right.
And then that gets into the interesting scenario of, like, is the loser of a conference championship game in line to get punished because they qualified when another team didn't, and someone's going to lose that game, and so they eat a loss on an off weekend? How is the committee going to look at all of those things?
Yep.
But let's just set all of that aside, and let's just say you had a really nice season. You had did something James Franklin has not done since he's been here. which is make it through the regular season slate with one or fewer losses.
Yep.
And then you lose a home playoff game. So that would be like tantamount to losing a New Year's Six type bowl in prior years. I can't think of too many seasons that Penn State has had like that. Now, they lost the Rose Bowl in 2016, but they had already won the Big Ten championship game. So they had a conference title under their belt. I just can't think of too many seasons where you had a really, really good regular season and then didn't cap it off with something that made the fan base feel pretty good. So to your point, we would be in entirely uncharted waters in terms of how people felt at the end of the season if you had that kind of a regular season campaign and then lost at home in the first round of these new expanded playoffs. So it's interesting to think about.
That Rose Bowl matchup with USC too, Booch, like that was such an epic game.
It was so good.
I mean,
fantastic
it was,
game.
and we did a post-game show and I saw at another station at the time, and we took calls, and there were people that were genuinely upset that Penn State let it get away and all that. And I understand it, but I think most people were like, man, I mean, it was clearly a game that could go either way. You felt like, man, another minute and Penn State maybe gets back on top. Like it was, I don't know, that game. You want to win a game like that, a classic, but it was such a great game that it was hard to come away saying you're disappointed in the loss, but not in the performance or the effort that Penn State gave. Like I don't think anybody was like, man, I can't believe we just tanked it like that. Like it took a supreme effort by the USC offense.
Expectations and feeling around the team, they all factor in. So the expectations going into 2016 were not this team is going to win the Big Ten by any stretch of the imagination. And the whole core of that team was coming back. Deshaun Hamilton and Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley and the bulk of the offensive line, the bulk of the defensive starters, you knew they were all coming back. Whereas this year, you're coming off a season where expectations were sky high and they fell short. I think certainly you have bigger ambitions before this season than we did before 2016. And this is a recruiting class that people have circled their junior year since years ago, saying when these guys are upperclassmen, that's going to be the year for Penn State. So, again, there's a little bit of a do or die vibe. Although, really, I still think last year was way more of a do or die situation than this year is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that the 10-2 mark that has kind of become the standard for better or worse for Penn State. Yeah. I mean, that 10-2 mark feels like that's going to again be kind of where if this team gets to 11-1, it'll be slightly exceeding expectations.
And think about the wins they'll have under their belt in order to have gotten there too, right? There are going to be some really good wins on the way to 11-1.
So, yes. So this is the other part of it.
Even if all the teams turn out to stink, which I don't think they all will.
No,
but you're going to beat some brand names. You're going to beat UCLA, West Virginia, Washington. You're going to win at Wisconsin. Like there are going to be some really nice, if for nothing else, brand equity wins on your resume if you go 11-1.
So that is the one thing. I like this season is interesting in a bunch of different ways to me, but one of them is that Michigan's off of the schedule, so you're not going to lose to both Ohio State and Michigan again. Take that for what it's worth, good or bad. Like it's not an opportunity, but with that. And I think Goon and I touched on this a little bit in one of the recent shows, or maybe it was you and me. I'm forgetting now. But when you look at this year's schedule, so last year, you kind of felt like you knew going in. It's like, they got to take care of business, and there were potential slip-ups along the way for sure. But if they take care of business, the season's going to boil down to 2 games. Yes. If you lose both, it's going to feel like a disappointment. If you split them, it's going to be, pretty good. And obviously, if you sweep them, then you're feeling great. And my gosh, they've gotten over the hurdle. Obviously, they lose both, and a little bit of a disappointment at the very least. Your degree of disappointment may vary, but disappointment for sure in Nittany Nation. What I think is interesting this year is I think that 10-2 mark is still kind of the the general expectation, both within the fan base, I don't know about it in the locker room, but within the fan base, and certainly when you look at national expectations. I've seen some 9-3s, seen a couple of 11-1s, but most people are settling in on, yep, this will be a 10-2 Penn State
the win
team
total is
again.
9.5 in Vegas. Is that right?
Yeah, I saw 10.5 in one book. Now that was early. Yeah, that was early. I don't know if that moved or not, but 9.5 seems to be. And really, to me, Booch, and I know they like to get the half game, but I mean, 10 really does feel like the number to me. Like, sure. And so 9.5, like, I think I'm leaning toward taking the over. 10.5, I'd lean toward taking the under. I mean, 10 feels like a number. But here is the thing. So let's presume for the moment that, yep, Penn State just can't get over the hump against Ohio State, and that is one of the losses in Ohio State. I think everybody who follows college football considers Ohio State one of the top 2 teams, whether you have Georgia in front of them or not. Yeah. Again, your mileage may vary, but clearly absolutely loaded with talent, expectations exceedingly high. So for the purposes of this discussion, just take Ohio State out of the equation. What most are presuming, and again, I think most even in the Penn State fan base, is somewhere there's going to be a loss. But here is what I think is interesting, is that at least as we sit here now, and you got to see how the season plays out. Again, maybe USC catches fire, and this is a team. But, I mean, USC right now is expected to be maybe lower top 20 team. Like, that is not a team going into the season that most national experts, again, I'm not talking about within their program, I'm talking about most national experts, USC seems to be settling in anywhere from like 15 to 25. Yeah. They're not one of the top 12 teams listed in most publications, most projections going into this season. Certainly a big brand name, and you're on the road, and you take all of that into consideration. But outside of Ohio State, and Ohio State will be disappointing if you lose it for an entirely different set of reasons. But I think of the other 11 games, there's not a game that if you sit here right now, even though you're like, yeah, 10-2 would be okay, probably gets us into the playoffs, maybe we can do some damage there, we're okay with that. But if you go game by game, USC included, I don't think there's a game other than Ohio State where you're like, that would be anything other than a pretty significant disappointment. Perhaps understandable. I mean, I'm not saying there's not losses there that it's like, my gosh, the program has fallen apart. Starting right with the season opener. Like, they could lose at West Virginia. Sure.
Hey, listen, if you talk to any West Virginia fan online, they're already trying to figure out whether or not they can, how many points they can beat Pitt by. They're already writing off Penn State, which is, interestingly enough, what I saw a lot of Auburn fans doing too. And so, like, say what you will about James Franklin. Like, don't cross swords with Mr. September, okay? Like, I see a lot of these non-conference fan bases. We play anybody with a pulse. And for whatever reason, I think it's because the narrative on Franklin has shifted over the last couple of years, which, again, in some objective sense is just insane. That he can't win, he can't win when it matters. Well, I mean, okay, I get it. But, like, he's been an underdog in every single one of those big games that he's lost. And these teams are great. They're playoff teams and national champions for a reason. But because there was the hype around Penn State last year and in 2017 and a couple years in between, and ultimately we just didn't get it done when it mattered, I think now people have gone from perhaps overvaluing Franklin a skosh to, like, nationally speaking, massively undervaluing him. So I think the WVU fans have bought in way, way, way too much. Like, I was kind of nervous as the year was going on last year, and I saw how things were coming together for the Mountaineers, and thinking, this is going to be on the road. That's probably going to be a night game, which we're lucky it's not going to be. Yeah. We're going to dodge that night game environment in Morgantown. Yeah, this could be tough. But the more and more I just see this irrational, insane level of confidence from not just West Virginia fans, but some of the just, so-called impartial national guys, the more I'm thinking, no, I think we'll be okay.
I'm with you. Part of what I think the optimism in West Virginia is they're very high, and rightfully so, on their quarterback. And
Sure.
and like
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
any program.
And he played very well last year.
And he did. But Penn State saw him last year. They saw him up close and personal. They know what he's about. They have the tape. They have the actual experience of playing him. And it's not as though Penn State didn't get good quarterback play itself in that game and doesn't have a quarterback that has performed very well, very consistently.
An important thing to remember for West Virginia, too, is one of the big assets that team had last year. And again, I wouldn't be too excited because you had a 9-win season in the Big 12. I'm not sure there are 9 good teams in the Big 12. But a big asset for West Virginia was their offensive line. And I can't name you all the starters they lost off of that group, but I know it was a senior-heavy offensive front for them. And I do know for sure Zach Frazier, who I thought was one of the best picks in the first 3 rounds of the draft, and you're hoping I'm right.
I am very much hoping
he's going to be
right.
playing on Sunday wearing black and gold. And so even if you get the quarterback back, as we well know here in Happy Valley, if you don't get a good offensive line in front of your quarterback, a lot of times it doesn't matter how talented he is.
And it's not just that James Franklin has done well in September, because the initial gut reaction that's when everybody stocks up on the cupcakes, and Penn State has done its fair share of that. But also in there, you're talking about a road game against a dangerous Purdue team. I'm not saying that was a light the world on fire team, but season openers are always a little scary. The one thing
we've seen some teams go into that night game environment in West Lafayette and get nipped, right?
Yeah, so it's a pretty good team.
Yeah, Penn State was set up to have. You're talking about the 2022 season, and Penn State was set up to have a real challenge there. And look, you would love to be able to just blow the doors off a team like Purdue, but Aiden O'Connell's playing in the NFL now. They're a good quarterback on the other side. Really, really good environment. First game of the season, Thursday night. A lot of we know how much James Franklin likes having his routine interrupted.
And listen, and winning at Wisconsin to open up is no small feat.
And I don't care whether Auburn was having a down year or not. That's an SEC opponent. You blew them out in their building.
And so I do think one of the things that Franklin has done very well in non-COVID years is they come out of the gate and they're ready for that opener. And I think it helps them. And I think it probably helps most programs. It probably is helping West Virginia that they have Penn State as their opener in terms of, all right, we're dialed in and focused right from the get-go.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so, but I think Penn State's in good shape with that game. While I don't think it's devastating if they lose it, I do think it would be bitterly disappointing for Penn State fans, certainly in the moment. And I just think in the overall picture, again, West Virginia is a program at this stage that Penn State should be beating.
Yes.
And the other thing is you've talked about this quite a bit, but over the last 2 years now, Penn State has not stubbed its toe against the programs that, you talked about it. They used to seemingly always have a loss every year against a team that's like you're scratching your head. Well, they haven't had that the last couple of years. And, again, I don't think it would be like the end of the world or the most shocking thing we've ever seen in college football if Penn State goes to Morgantown and loses. Again, it would be, to me, unexpected. I think to most Penn State fans, very unexpected, very disappointing.
Agreed.
I think if you start going through the schedule, it's the same thing. Like at Wisconsin, as we sit here now, I think it's going to be a tough game. I'm not expecting Penn State to go in there and blow the doors off the Badgers, but Penn State is favored in that game as we sit here right now, for whatever that's worth. That would be disappointing. Again, kind of the same thing. It's like, well, you haven't proven that you're elite yet. You're not elite yet, Penn State. But you have catapulted into that category where, with Wisconsin where it's at right now, even on the road, you ought to be winning that game. That would be that game. Losing that game would be very disappointing. Again, 10-2, I don't think would be horribly disappointing. At USC, again, with what we know right now that all of these things obviously can change. We got to see what the season brings and how these teams unfold. But USC with a new quarterback, albeit a highly heralded, talented by all accounts quarterback, new quarterback. Penn State with an established starter. USC rebuilding a little bit, you're thinking. Most people are thinking they are. Again, tough game. Nobody's saying it's a gimme. But I think that would be disappointing, going out there and losing that game itself. And right on down the line, I mean, certainly, Maryland or Minnesota, those would be very disappointing losses.
They sure
you lose
would.
the whiteout game to Illinois. Look out, Booch. But my point is, I think if you go down, and it's always dangerous to do this, and we'll do it with the NFL schedule at some point this summer where, all right, what are we expecting with the Eagles and the Steelers? And we go game by game, and it's ludicrous, especially to do it before the season.
Although, hey, by the way, and really probably not to form for either one of us, I think you and I did pretty well when we did our game.
We actually did do reasonably well.
Yeah.
For me, astoundingly well, given my track record.
I went, I went a little bit off the rails at the end with the Eagles, but the Eagles went a little bit off the rails. But,
they did indeed.
And I think it's a lot harder to do that in the NFL
for sure,
because of talent parity, and because of how long the regular season is and how influential injuries can be. It's very hard to do that. Whereas in college football, you really ought to be able to reliably, at least like about 75% of the games, you ought to be able to write those in Penn about 75% of the time, right?
Yeah, I agree. 8 or 9 games on the Penn State schedule, you at least feel going in, you've got pretty good handle. Ohio State, likely a loss. Don't rule out the win. West Virginia, USC, Wisconsin, probably the 3 games. Am I forgetting somebody there that would be a
So, I mean, again, I think people are going to look at Washington coming to Happy Valley in November, and they're going to say, oh, they were in the national championship game last year, but they lost so much.
And they're coming across.
The core of that offense all is gone to the NFL.
Yeah.
They lost multiple players to the transfer portal, and they lost their head coach. I mean, you were talking about – now, I like Jed Fish, by the way. I thought the reclamation job he did at Arizona was remarkable.
Yeah.
But just the state of that roster right now, you look at them and you stack them up against Penn State. The reason why it's so much easier to accurately project season schedules in the preseason for college is because you can just look at the talent disparity, which, I mean, the NFL is engineered to avoid that.
Yeah.
The NFL is engineered to have talent parity. College football is still largely based on talent disparity. And I think the gap between where Washington is right now, throw out that team that was on the field in the postseason last year. I think Penn State's potentially a double-digit favorite in that game.
I think that's right, and I think much the same. Not in terms of what they did last year, but I honestly look at Washington kind of like I look at UCLA this season, and especially at Beaver Stadium.
Fair.
I just have a really hard time seeing either of those teams not only winning, but really challenging in any significant way this season. Now, down the road, I'm not saying anything, but I just
and look, man, I don't want to be that guy, but there is something to the fact that the Pac-12 they play a less physical brand of football in the Pac-12 than they do in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
and I think all of those schools, Oregon included, coming in and just getting beat up over the course of a 9-game Big Ten conference schedule. I understand that teams like Iowa and Illinois and Rutgers, they don't have the horses that these top-end teams coming in from the Pac-12 do, but what they do have are a bunch of hard-nosed guys who are going to thump you. And I understand that sounds like super cliche to say it, but I do think there is some truth behind it. And over the course of a season, I think these new Pac-12 schools, I do think they're going to get a little beat up this year. And so Washington's coming in late. They don't come in until, I think, the 9th of November.
Yeah, I think the 2 programs that are best set up in that regard are USC and Oregon. But I agree that both of them, it is different. It is one thing to be physical, and I think both of those teams are pretty physical. It is another to be playing physical opponents week in and week out, and I just don't think there's no way you can experience that or prepare for it other than to experience it.
The bottom half
of
the conference in the Big Ten is going to physically wear you out in a way the bottom 2/3 of the Pac-12 just would not. I mean, just
think that's right.
Just go through your head, go through the schools in the Pac-12 and say which one of those programs, even if I beat them convincingly, is just going to beat my guys up for 4 quarters the way like Nebraska's going to, the way Iowa is going to, the way Brett
Rutgers and Michigan State. I mean, you're talking like those guys are going to come out and they are going to smash you in the mouth, whether or not they have
Rutgers
the skill
is
set.
Rutgers is like, I think, an example of the ultimate blunt instrument, where it's like they're almost like watching like the Chuck Daly Bad Boys Piston teams, where it's like, listen, guys, like we don't have the athletes to hang with this team, but we're going to beat you up for 4 quarters.
So at the end of the day, again, while I think 10-2 is certainly acceptable or will be acceptable to the majority of fans,
if it gets you a playoff,
yes, I'm
which I think I do think it does. Yeah,
I do think there's going to be. In some ways, even more disappointment with the individual loss, wherever that other loss comes. Again, when you go through this schedule, I just, and yes, I'm the eternal optimist and all of that, and I get everything wrong. So I'll own up to all of that. It's just as we sit here right now, I don't see another loss on the schedule. And I'm not saying that it's impossible or anything like that. Obviously, I think 4 losses is within the realm of possibility.
Sadly,
would
yes.
be bitterly disappointing, but is within the realm of possibility. But, and while I would be okay with 10-2, I just, if you go through game by game, it's like, well, 11-1 is where this team, I think, should be with what it has coming back, with the matchups. And what I think is interesting with the 9.5 number that is, I think, overwhelmingly the number that has been settled on as the win-loss breaking point for Penn State, the betting line. I think Penn State is favored in 11 games right
Correct.
now.
Yes.
And so that's what's just interesting to me. So you're presuming a loss to a team that Penn State is right now favored against. And again, over the last 2 years, and even before that, I mean, frankly, yes, had stubbed his toe here and there. But, I mean, Penn State's record as a favorite overall has been outstanding.
Yeah.
And it has been impeccable over the last 2 years, where they're not only winning as a favorite, they are covering I forget. I mean, much more often than not. Like it's not just that they're, they were favored, but they were supposed to win by 20 and they won by 2. No, they're generally covering the line as well, covering the spread by a good bit with the line. So, while I'm not even arguing that the line should be different, I find that interesting. The Penn State. Again, if you go through the schedule, it's like, well, that adds up to 11 wins and 1 loss. And yet here you have the line established at 9.5.
Yeah.
Meaning that you're expecting half of the public is going to have Penn State losing 2 games that, as we sit here right now, they're favored in. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's a little curious. I don't know off the top of my head what the line on the USC game is. To me, that's the inflection point for the season. And I understand what you say, rebuilding for sure. They had a very underwhelming year last year based on expectations with Caleb Williams last go around and, Lincoln Riley and everything. I mean, it is kind of same old song with USC. Potent offense, like really bad defense.
Really bad defense. And they may be better this year. I mean, they're obviously.
I don't think they're going to be much better.
I don't think it's going to be a dramatic improvement. Like, you're not going to see them coming out and being one of the top 4 or 5 defenses in the Big Ten. And while I understand there's questions at wide receiver and everything with Penn State, I don't know. Like I said, it's not going to be the end of the world if Penn State loses that game. I think Penn State again, at least as we sit here right now, I think Penn State has the better team. I think they have the more experienced offense in some key spots. Now, again, the receiving core, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
And obviously the replacements on the offensive line. I'm optimistic about that offensive line being good, maybe not quite as good as last year, but much like the defense as a whole, well, I think there's going to be some drop-off. I don't think it's going to be a real significant or substantial drop-off.
I don't think so either. I do think at this point there are definitely questions forming around Lincoln Riley's ability to win the big game, but where I think he has absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt, unquestionably, is the ability to develop quarterbacks.
Yep.
I mean, the guy's coached multiple Heisman Trophy winners and number one overall picks, and to scheme offense. And so the reason why I am uneasy about the USC game is, first of all, I understand in many ways it doesn't matter, but Mike the Mailman's been doing these trends to treasure bits on obligatory for 7 years, and it's won money 7 years in a row just based on 12 of the last 14 times Northwestern covered the spread on the road against Illinois. So there's something to it.
Yep.
Penn State's never won on the West Coast versus USC, either at the Coliseum or in a bowl game. So there's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the contributing factors to that, which even if you throw all the history out, is just the transcontinental travel. And so when I look at it and I say, okay, if we look at what USC did in the bowl game last year, and I understand there's all reasons why you maybe don't want to do that, but that's the one piece of evidence we have about what is the 2024 offense maybe going to look like. And we pair that up with what we know about what Lincoln Riley has done historically with his offenses and his starting quarterbacks. And we say, okay, I can project that USC, it's fair to say, is probably going to have a potent offense, and they're probably going to have a very lackluster defense, which means potentially it's not unlike that Rose Bowl. It's a last to hold the ball shootout type of game.
Yep.
And if you're going to be in that type of game, you would rather be the home team that didn't fly across the continental United States to get there, right? So I do think, while I get what you're saying about how just you look at the line and you look at the overall roster talent and you say Penn State's the better team, I don't think I disagree. But when I look at the other factors, it does to me feel like that could be a defining win for Penn State if they get it, even if USC doesn't have a great season, just to make that trip across the country, to play an offense, which I do think is going to have the ability to put points on the board. And in that, under those hostile circumstances, to come away with a W, I think that could be a season. I mean, like a momentum, season changing, potentially, depending on how the rest of the year goes, a program changing win for Penn State. I think that's a really important road trip to go out there and try to get that win at USC, in part because they do look like they could be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's it's going to be an interesting season.
It's like mid-June, and I'm scared about the USC game. All right? Thanks a lot, Ironhead. I appreciate that.
That's what I'm here to do. Drum up a little fear. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll take a break here. There's some
I'm going to go take a Xanax, and then we'll do the rest of the show.
There you go. And we will be back with more. It is the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. We are here at Quaker Steak and Lube, a place that we absolutely love. Just watched Harbor Creek with a walk-off victory, a little bit of a bobble on what was a single into left field, and they had a runner at second and center, and they never had a chance once the ball was bobbled, and Juniata loses a heartbreaker.
Wow.
1-0 in the
1-0
championships. Yeah.
Again, that is a brutal way to lose.
And they were threatening. They, being Juniata, was threatening in the top of the inning and had I think it was two base runners. What a game. And it is. I tell you, we had, I had the opportunity to do the Bald Eagle area softball game on Monday in the semifinals, and they lost a tough one there to South Williamsport. And we talked about it, Dave Breon and I, after that game. And no great revelations here, I understand, but it is amazing to watch the emotions and everything that goes into a championship event. And I don't care whether you're talking about the World Series. I don't care if you're talking about, a semifinal game at the, single A softball or baseball, anything, Little League championships.
Yeah.
You watch the emotions and how much the kids, the families, the coaches, everybody, grown men and women that are playing it, you're invested. And I mean, it is great, right? Like it's why winning a championship means so much. It is so hard, and you have to get a break somewhere along the way. Like every championship coach that's honest with you, and every championship player will tell you, yep, I mean, it was all about preparation, hard work, and yeah, somewhere in there, we got a bounce that went our way.
Sure.
Now, the bounces tend to go the way of the teams that are prepared, that are playing loose.
Yeah.
Don't let the pressure get to them. I get all of that, but you still, somewhere along the way, something goes your way like, oh, man, that could have gone either way, and it went our way. Cool. It just is part of it. But the emotions, I'm just watching the Juniata kids. I mean, you're that close. I mean, you're right there to winning a state title. And, again, the left fielder getting a big hug here and obviously feeling horrible about the situation. I'm not sure they would have had if she came up clean. I'm not positive they would have gotten her. It would have been a play for sure at the plate. But for folks that aren't sports fans and you wonder why knuckleheads like us get invested in it, it's the emotions and the stories that go into those emotions. And again, it's so tough when you get that close to achieving a dream and you're denied. And then on the other side, you see the dream realized and you see the emotions pouring out. I want to pick up a little bit when we come back on James Franklin and the expectations and elite versus very good and all of that, because I think there's as usual, I think there's a little more nuance than many are willing to grant. But we'll talk about that and kick that around as we continue with the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here on Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA, signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes are back home June 18th and 19th. The Spikes take on the Williamsport Crosscutters, and you can enjoy the return of Walking Taco Tuesday. Get half-price walking tacos at the new salsa stand next to the Kids Zone. Then it's Glizzy and Wine Wednesday, presented by Seven Mountains Wine Cellars, with half-price country store brand hot dogs all game long and half-price wine from 5:30 to 7:30. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Habaker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Habaker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Habaker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
We welcome you back here to Quaker Steak and Lube on an absolutely perfect day for baseball, softball, at least for the fans. Might be a little warm for the players, I'm not sure. But, boy, it is a gorgeous day here at Penn State, which is hosting the PIAA State Softball and Baseball Championships, as well as the Boys Volleyball and Lacrosse Championships this weekend. So, again, welcome to all of the fans of the respective teams that may be in the area. Hope you enjoy your stay.
Yes,
and,
sir.
Again, locally, congratulations to the Bald Eagle area baseball team, back-to-back AA state champions, and 11-3 win today over Tri-Valley. And that offense of Bald Eagle area is just something else. And Todd and Norm talked about it again today, but it just is a lineup that does not have a hole in it. Like all 9 of those kids, and you saw it today, the bottom of the order, like there is no break there for opposing pitchers, and just eventually, really against everybody, they get to you. You just, as a pitcher, it's got to be just kind of overwhelming to have to be on with every batter, like on, because those guys, you make a mistake and they are going to make you pay.
It's
and
wild
even if you don't
to
make
me.
a mistake, they can make you pay.
It is wild to me. I understand there's probably explanations for it, but still, like an area that just has consistently that concentration of talent in, any given sport or just in athletics in general, because BEA does really well in several sports.
Yeah.
But I mean, in softball and baseball, they have just been on an absolute tear. It's crazy.
It is. It's been very, very impressive. And, certainly this senior class of athletes that are, I guess have finished up at Bald Eagle area, it will long be remembered as, arguably the best class. You look across the board at what that program did this year, that athletic program I'm talking about, from football, basketball was good, wrestling was outstanding, baseball, and on the boys' side I'm talking about here, like it was just an amazing class. And, to some degree, some of it is cyclical. Again, 6 seniors in that lineup. It will be surprising, certainly, if Bald Eagle area wins a 3rd straight title next year. But it's not like they're going to drop off. I mean, as you said, I mean, those programs are established enough that it's just, again, not every year maybe a state championship year, but you're going to be a formidable team.
Yeah.
Just year in and year out. And it is impressive at a school the size of Bald Eagle area that they've been able to do what they've been able to do. And again, back-to-back state championships here for the baseball program, first time in school history. Celebration, I imagine, is continuing and will well into the evening here in Wingate. So congratulations again. And again, we just watched Harbor Creek close out a hard-fought 1-0 win over Juniata, heartbreaker for Juniata. I think our signal gets into at least parts of Juniata. So great season for that softball program. But again, Harbor Creek wins it on, I guess it'll go down as a walk-off error ultimately. It was a single, but the Boone in left field kind of allowed the winning run, the only run of the game, to score in the bottom of the seventh there for Harbor Creek. And the beloved Buccos have come back and tied things up here. They're now in the top of the sixth, and it is the Pirates and Cardinals even at 3 runs apiece. And as Todd Brown put it to me last week, the one thing we have going for us as Pirates fans this year is they are watchable. Like, they are a fun team to watch. Maybe not the best team in Major League Baseball by any stretch, as the Phillies just may be. But boy, they are a competitive team. And if you watch the game, you don't feel like you're wasting your time if you're a Pirates fan, which you could not say that very often in many of the seasons over the last 4 decades.
Yeah, for sure. And if you look at the lineup and you look at, for sure, the starting rotation, one of the things that I think makes that more tolerable is not only are you going to get an entertaining product that you don't, want to pour bleach in your eyes while you're sitting and watching, you can also look at how long those guys are under contract.
Yeah.
And even if you're cynical, which as a Pirates fan, you have every right and reason to be.
You have to be.
And you say, look, all these guys eventually end up getting dealt before ownership has to pay them on a second deal. The second deal is not going to come for 2 or 3 years in the case of almost all of these guys. So the chance for Pittsburgh to actually keep a talented core together for a couple of years and make a run at the expanded playoffs in a division that doesn't look like it's suddenly going to become more competitive anytime soon, I think those are all reasons to give Pirates fans more hope than they've had in, as far as I can recollect, like at least a decade since they were making that play-in game for the wild card. And so I think in terms of the last quarter century plus of this franchise's history, you can't ask for too much more. Right?
Well, and you do have, a couple of really marketable commodities. Obviously, Skeens now is it is not
superstar
often that you see an opposing pitcher in his 6th or 7th major league start get a standing ovation from the opposing crowd. And St. Louis fans, to their credit, I mean, they stood as one and applauded the efforts of Skeens in that series opener.
Throwing out Ohtani because he's such a unique talent. The last time just a pure starting pitcher created this kind of hype right out of the gate, Steven Strasburg.
I think that's exactly where I would go. I don't think
it's been a while.
Anybody since, that has this type and has gotten off to a start that makes you feel like the hype is legit. Like it's like, man, okay, this looks like the real deal for sure. And we'll see. I hate making predictions one way or the other on injuries, but it does feel like with the way he pitches, and listen, the number of curveballs he threw in that St. Louis game the other night was, I think it was like 20%, they said, or close to it, of his pitches were curveballs. So, he does have a little more mass. It's not a guy that's just trying to blow it by you. I mean, he does have a nice pitching repertoire and has a nice feel for, all right, this is maybe where we need to drop this one in.
Yeah.
It feels like with the way he throws the ball that, this is a career that can last without any, significant major injuries, which, is not always the case when you see, fastball reliant pitchers coming up. It's like, it's a lot of torque. And I'm not saying there's not a lot of torque there, but the motion is, I wouldn't say effortless, but boy, it is a nice, smooth motion. Like it doesn't look like he's laboring or, oh my gosh, how do you get the body to do that when you watch him pitch, even with the fastball. So
he definitely does not feel like one of those young guys, and we've seen a ton of them, including in Philly, where as soon as you hear they're called up, in the back of your head, you start the internal counter and how long until they're up for Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
He feels like he could maybe dodge that bullet.
Knock on wood here. Sure. talk about the Phillies a little bit. And first, I think significant injury, at least that I'm aware of. And it will be interesting to see. Now, I think
Trey Turner's missed a
4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah,
that's right.
Trey Turner's missed a fair amount of time. You just don't notice it because Edmundo Sosa was on a ridiculous tear. But yeah, I mean, this is in my opinion, we're talking about JT Realmuto is going to have meniscus surgery. I think this is a more serious injury than Trey Turner, actually. 4 to 5 weeks at the minimum. I think it could go potentially 6 to 7 because depending on how the team is playing, you want one of your best players to be at his best come August. So if they've got to take a little bit more time with him, so be it.
Yeah, and I think with the way they have positioned themselves very well to be able to withstand this, provided he comes back at 100% when he comes back. Yes, it is a significant injury, but the fact that he will be back and that the Phillies are in the position they are in, like this doesn't feel like a devastating injury to the Phillies or certainly their chances here of postseason success. It is amazing. I didn't realize till Goon was talking about just how good the starting pitchers have been, but and the more I've been thinking about it, the more I'm not sure I can really get my mind around in this era of professional sports and Major League Baseball, one team having 5 guys who are in the even in the top 20, let alone the top 7 of ERA in the National League. Like that is, it's incomprehensible to me. I just, again, getting two guys in the top 10 is. All right, man, we're in really, really good shape. This is special. 3 guys in like the top 15 would be remarkable. 5 of the top 7 is just absurd.
Now I
understand. I understand.
Ironhead, it's if you contrast this to the team from the early 2010s, which was composed primarily by, going out and signing established talent, top end pitching talent. In Philly's case this time, like it's just been a little bit of good timing, a little bit of luck, and a little bit of savvy, roster management. Like when Philadelphia signed Wheeler, clearly they liked what they saw, but also like the Mets, were not prioritizing keeping him in the fold. Now, I'm sure every Mets fan wishes they would have, but they saw something in him. They definitely did not expect to get what they got. Like, I think if you go back to when Philly signed him, I think it was, over 2 seasons ago now. And if you could have gotten an honest assessment of what is your best case scenario, he would have exceeded it. I think when they drafted Aaron Nola, they have gotten exactly what they hoped for from him. I mean, I think, I don't think anybody, the most optimistic Ranger Suarez fans, were not projecting what he's doing right now. So it's been a little bit of, like you were talking about, any team that wins at a high level, you make your own luck to some extent, but you get some luck somewhere along the way. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Tom Brady this week is, inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. Like there's a guy who to me is the perfect example of, where your opportunity meets effort and you can capitalize on the luck. That guy, I mean, had some absolute lucky breaks that helped him collect all those Super Bowl rings.
And he obviously was very good. I was a little surprised that he goes into the Patriots Hall of Fame, though. I really consider him one of the best Patriots.
You thought he was kind of on the fence? Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could make the case for him, but I don't know that there's ever been a more sure thing.
Tom Brady's in the Patriots Hall of Fame, and yet, Sam Gash is still waiting for the phone call.
Go figure. It is inexplicable at the end of the day. Let's see where maybe we'll take a break here. I do want to talk about the I guess infamous at this point James Franklin press conference where we're
I want to go to that topic
because
too,
I do want to delve into it a bit because, again, I think there's a lot there to unpack now that we're whatever we are, 7 years removed, roughly.
I'm sorry to say, yes.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that when we come back. You are listening, and we appreciate your doing so, to the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Come on down, say hello, enjoy some great food, watch some great sports. Again, we've got PCN on down here. They are covering the softball championships live. And then Bald Eagle Area's baseball game, by the way, will be one of the 3 games that will be I guess it's not technically tape delayed now. What do you call it? Just delayed. It'll be aired later. There's no tape involved.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy. I still also use the term tape delay.
That Eagles game will be on tonight at 7 o'clock. And if you're a Bald Eagle area fan, you're going to want to watch that one again, I think. And if you weren't able to see it, and I wasn't, I listened to Todd and Norm's call, you'll have a chance to watch it tonight. 7 o'clock is when that game will air on PCN tonight. But we also have the U.S. Open on down here. Can come on in and watch the Pirates. They now need to rally again against the Cardinals, down 4-3 in the 6th. And again, come on down, say hello, enjoy great food, great service, great beverages, and check out all of the sports on the TVs as well. You are listening to the Goon and Ironhead show on WFXS, Pleasant Gap State College, also known as Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes are back home June 18th and 19th. The Spikes take on the Williamsport Crosscutters, and you can enjoy the return of Walking Taco Tuesday. Get half-price walking tacos at the new salsa stand next to the Kids Zone. Then it's Glizzy and Wine Wednesday, presented by Seven Mountains Wine Cellars, with half-price country store brand hot dogs all game long and half-price wine from 5:30 to 7:30. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Habaker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Habaker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Habaker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
We are back here at Quaker Steak and Lube on a gorgeous Thursday afternoon. And again, the Goon is up at Medler Field at Lebrano Park, taking in the baseball action. And
rooting on the alma mater.
Yeah, LaSalle, I think, is playing right there in the last game. Or did they play in this?
No, I think they're in the last game.
Yeah, I think they're in the game that was scheduled to start at 4:30. Nothing has been starting on time this afternoon. I'm not sure how far back that game is going to be pushed, but I would be very surprised if they're going to get that one underway even by 5:30 here this evening. But Chris Buganati filling in for Goon, the Deer Booch, and we're talking some Penn State football here. I do think so. The whole elite and the critics of James Franklin, like the most ardent critics, that is the press conference they will go back to. James Franklin said that he's going to do everything he can. They are going to make the step to being elite. They don't want to just be very good. Even the most ardent James Franklin supporters, to this point, have to concede that Penn State has not been elite. They haven't been in the Final Four.
No question.
Once. So you can't possibly be considered an elite program with that. Now, there's a couple of things, just my perspective, and then I'll defer to you. But
yeah.
One is, regardless of coach, circumstance, everything else, I want my coach, my players of whatever team I'm supporting, I want that team to have the highest of expectations. So, and I've talked about this a lot with wrestling, where not everybody that wants to be a national champion and commits to being a national champion ends up becoming a national champion. But nobody who had the goal of, man, I hope I can have a winning record, ends up the national champion. If your goal is to have a winning record or to be the starter, and as long as you're the starter, you're okay with that, you're not winning the national title. Like, that's not how that works. So to be elite, you have to, again, not everybody that wants to be elite is going to be elite. But there is no way you're going to become one of those top 3 or 4 programs if your goal and your intention is not to be one of those programs.
Yep.
Now, do I think that Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, maybe Clemson, whoever else you want to throw in there, but those 3 clearly would be elite programs. Do we think that those are the only 3 programs that want to be elite? Of course not. Texas may be on the brink of it. USC wants to be elite. Penn State wants to be elite. Wisconsin wants to be elite. Iowa wants to be elite. There's probably 40 to 50 programs that, truly are, committed to trying to become elite.
That may be a tad overly generous.
Well, I don't know. In football, for some sports, I think so. Maybe we can do that someday is sit down. But I think Washington fancies itself as a program that can become elite. They may consider themselves elite. I don't think they are right now.
At this point, I think you're probably right.
You could make an argument for it. Oregon, I'd have to sit down. I don't. Maybe it is a little high, but there are certainly a great number of programs, more than the 3 or 4 that are elite, that want to get there and at least feel like they are making the commitment to get there.
Yeah, there's probably at least 25. And when I say, look, so let's take a program like Iowa or Wisconsin, right? Those are really good football programs. And Wisconsin's won multiple Big Ten titles within the last 25 years. They had a lot of 10-win seasons. I think I've always joked. I said, I think the Wisconsin fans might be the happiest sports fans in America because they seem to understand and appreciate how rare 10 wins in a season is. And then they're happy as pigs in slop to get there. And they're not they don't spend their entire offseason agonizing over the 2 games they lost. They're just drinking and happy and eating some bratwurst and enjoying the 10 wins. But I don't think there is the expectation in the Hawkeye or the Badger fan base of being at the highest level of the sport like there is in, I'm conservatively saying 7 or 8 SEC fan bases.
Yeah.
Like I was just talking with some friends last night about what a mess the Florida program is right now. I don't know if you've taken a look at their schedule. It is an absolute bear. And I really believe that the reason why Billy Napier did not get the axe this offseason is that the administration there looked at this schedule and they're like, look, we're going to get rid of this guy anyway. Let's let him take the fall instead of saddling the new guy with, 5 or 6 wins if you're lucky. And nevertheless, like Florida's fan base, they think they should be in the 12-team playoff every year. And that's the same as about 7 or 8 SEC fan bases. I don't think there's that level of fervor at, that's probably fair. 4 or 5 Big Ten schools.
No, I think that
are still very good.
All right, so let's delve into Penn State a little bit because
Penn State for sure is one of those places.
The knock, and the knock that most people have on James Franklin, right? Most people will say, "Listen, the guy can recruit, but game day management or whatever it is." I don't even think you can really say he doesn't develop the talent because look at the NFL, and actually the critics will say, "Well, yeah, look at they keep producing NFL talent, and where are the results?"
Well, I think that's kind of a strange argument because when you think about it, it's like you're going to have to pick a lane. You're either going to have to say that we haven't recruited elite talent at key positions, which actually, if you go back and you look at James's recruiting track record, despite the fact that he is lauded as this, recruiter who maybe can't coach. I did this thing with Jim Galante on Keystone Sports a couple weeks ago where we did like a positional all James Franklin era team, 11 starters on offense and defense. And like, it was like almost embarrassing the number of guys who came off the 2014 team to make it into that lineup. And I looked at it and I said, Jim, as I'm looking at this, I think we might have it in reverse. I think the guy might be a better developer of talent than he is a recruiter because we're getting, we're swimming in this rare, these rare waters where there's only a very limited number of 5 stars to go around. And let's be honest, we whiff on a lot of them. And nevertheless, I think we max out the talent of the guys we do end up with, thus the number of NFL draft picks.
Yeah, and so that's exactly where I wanted to go here, too, because, again, that is the perception. James Franklin is a great recruiter, but, not great game day coach and doesn't know how to utilize the talent he has. But if you look pretty consistently, and I did not delve into all of the numbers here, but pretty consistently, Penn State's, there's a couple of things that I just think are at least worth pointing out. One is that while I too think James Franklin is a good recruiter, Penn State's classes, I don't know that he's ever had a top 3 class or top 5 class. Maybe
I think he had 1 top 5 class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty consistently, Penn State is in that 10 to 15 range nationally.
Yeah.
And pretty consistently in the top 3 or 4.
By the way,
in the Big Ten.
As I'm thinking about it, I think that 1 top 5 class was boosted by the presence of Ricky Slade and Justin Shorter, who were both 5-star recruits and, didn't pan out at Penn State or anywhere.
Well,
really.
And so to that end, the number of 5-star recruits that Penn State gets. And again, I do think James Franklin is a good recruiter, very good recruiter.
Yes, agreed.
To consistently get top 10, 15 classes, you've got to be a good recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument here is not that he doesn't know how to recruit or he's not doing the job. But when we're talking about getting to the elite status, being one of the top 3 or 4 programs in the country, there are a few things that I think need to be in place. And one of them is you have to be bringing in as many of the 4 or 5-star recruits as the other elite programs.
Yep.
While Penn State is recruiting well, they are not consistently bringing in the number of 4 and 5-star recruits that Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama are.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not.
Yep.
So that's one. When you look at now in this era of NIL, I think Penn State has done a very good job of playing catch up, and they're getting there. I think this landscape is going to change quickly too once we get to whatever this collective bargaining looks like, and that's going to even out that part of the playing field. Now, there's still a component there with endorsements and stuff that I think Penn State is just going to be behind in. And again, not behind many schools, but behind the top 4 to 6 schools in football. We can save that discussion for another day. But I also think it is important at Penn State, and count me as one of those that does value it, is that I do think there is a genuine commitment here by James Franklin, by this administration, to make this a college program, meaning the kids are going to go to school, they're going to graduate by and large, and the commitment is to, we want to be successful on the football field, but bigger picture, we want these guys and girls in the athletic programs to get a degree and to be able to go on and use their academic and athletic success and prowess here to bigger and better things out in society. I don't think that is necessarily the focus of a lot of programs, especially elite programs. Not to disparage. I'm not sitting here naming anybody, but I think there is a different emphasis and focus on win first. And it's cool if we can get some kids graduated, but we're here to produce a football program. Mm-hmm. I do think there is a little different mentality here with Penn State. I have brought this up probably too many times for the Franklin critics, but while Penn State fans, and especially the critics of Franklin, it's like, oh my gosh, we're paying all of this money and look at the return. James Franklin is not one of the top 6 or 7 paid coaches in college football. He's not. Is he getting a lot of money? Yep. Are you getting what you're paying for? Yeah. Penn State has consistently been a top 10 program under James Franklin. They are the money that Penn State has put into that football program and into the coaches' salaries. It is a lot. I'm not making the argument that it is not a lot. I'm not making the argument that it should be more. But it is not what Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, now Texas, USC, it's not what those programs are putting into their football program.
Yeah,
it's
unfortunately, a lot is a relative concept because, if you look around at housing prices, I think most sane people would say that these days a house costs a lot. And yet, if you compare houses, maybe a house that is worth, $100,000 to $200,000 more than it would have been 5 or 6 years ago, you can say, well, that house costs a lot. Well, compare it to like an actual quote unquote expensive house these days. Right. And maybe it doesn't. So exactly. I remember as you were talking about that, Ironhead, I was thinking about, I can't remember where I was. I want to say it was at some event at the Hub. I feel like it was in the Hub for some reason, but wherever it was, Graham Spanier was speaking there while he was still the president of Penn State. And we were, maybe 2 or so years away from the scandal. So it was very clear at this point that we were coming to the end of the Paterno era at Penn State. Nobody could quite pin down where it was going to be, but you knew you were a few years out. So he could speak pretty openly about the fact that Joe's not going to be the head coach for very much longer. And he said, when I look around at the rest of college football and I see what schools are spending to be at the level we're at right now, I don't think Penn State is going to spend that money. And I remember hearing that and thinking, well, you're going to be in for a rude awakening from the boosters and alumni if you think that's the case. But now I go back and I've always thought about that. And I look at what Penn State is spending relative to the top end of the market, like you just talked about, and the fist, tooth, and nail fight it took to get even this amount spent. And I thought, you know what? He was, in relative terms, he was actually right.
Yep. And so this is, to me, a little bit of the quandary or the conundrum now, if you're Penn State, is I do think James Franklin has a pretty good idea of what it takes to be elite.
And we now know, thanks to the Patriot News, that at that time Graham Spanier was giving that speech, the group I was with. I mean, Joe, we were like, we were like 12 months removed from our second Big Ten title in 4 years, probably. And Joe Paterno was making somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million a year. It's like we were just living in a rent-controlled apartment for 50 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, walked out into the sunlight of the modern real estate market, and just the sticker shock was immobilizing for Penn State, for its fans, for its donors, for everybody. And you know, we're more than 10 years in, we're still recovering from that sticker shock, I think.
Yep. And I think the NIL component only adds to it.
Oh,
and again,
time.
I think there's some things that the Penn State can do to close the gap in some ways, but there's also some things that it just can't and won't do, I don't believe, to, again, necessarily be at a point where you can match. Again, we're only talking about it's Penn State is competitive on all of these fronts with and ahead of most schools, and competitive with some really good ones, just not Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, you know. And so I think at the end of the day, I think James Franklin probably, I think he knows, or at least has a pretty good idea of what it truly takes to be elite, consistently elite.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Penn State is going to, and I think Pat Kraft is committed to putting out championship programs across the board,
yep,
and that includes football. I don't think Penn State either has the resources or just is willing to go as all in as it needs to be consistently elite, meaning like Alabama, it's going to be a bitterly disappointing year when you're not in the championship game. And if you go 5 years without winning a championship, you're like, what is going on here? What has happened to us? I think Penn State, and count me as one of those that's okay with this. I know I know we're going to get a lot of variance, but if Penn State consistently graduates its players, if Penn State is consistently winning 10 games, and now, again, I get they haven't done this yet, but if once a decade they actually win a national title and they are in the Final Four one or two other times over that decade, again, count me as somebody. Now, the winning the national title part there is a big component of that. And I do think this is where not just Penn State, but I think Michigan, I think, is in much the same boat.
For sure.
And
sure.
What Michigan did last year was remarkable. I don't think anybody thinks, and I certainly don't think, especially with Harbaugh leaving, like I don't think Michigan is going to be a consistently elite program. I think they're going to be really good. I think I'm not saying they couldn't win another national title in the foreseeable future. I don't think they are going to be Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia.
No, because they also do not have the institutional culture. And I mean, I'm saying this in a complimentary sense. They don't have the institutional culture that says, we are going to go hog wild on football at the expense of literally everything else.
Yep.
Like it is football uber alles, like it is in the SEC. And I've always said, at least since Urban Meyer has gotten there, and probably even before, Ohio State's an SEC program in Big Ten country.
Yep, I agree. And I think, and agreed that that's in a complimentary way. So Michigan did win the national title. How did they do it? Well, they got a group of great leaders, developed them largely in-house, right? It wasn't a bunch of transfers coming in, key components, and so Penn State, I don't think Penn State is just going to out-recruit the elite teams. I don't think Penn State is going to consistently have elite recruiting classes. Doesn't mean they can't have a top 5 class from time to time. Doesn't mean there couldn't be a year where you get the top class. Man, just everything aligns. But I think pretty consistently Penn State's going to be, I think top end is going to be over a 5-year period. They'll have ideally, 3 top 10 classes and a couple that are in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's, and I think I think you can win a national title with that? I do. I think you need a couple of things. You need the right quarterback, a key component. I mean, you look at Clemson and what Dabo Swinney did, they went from non-elite, clearly non-elite, to elite, at least for a good, whatever it was, 5-6 year period where they were, I mean, it was them and Alabama. Those were the 2 elite programs there for that stretch. And then Ohio State was knocking on the door. But what they had was outstanding line play and elite line recruiting.
Yep.
And elite quarterback play, college quarterback play. That is what you need. Like, that is the recipe. You look at Michigan last year, great offensive and defensive line. I mean, great offensive line. And quarterback that was absolutely the right fit for that team and stirred the drink the way that program needed it to. Outstanding defense. Again, developed the right players, got enough of the 4 or 5-star recruits at the right spots, coming together at the right time. But again, I think over the next 10 years, Michigan might get back to another national title game. And again, I don't think that's disparaging the Michigan program.
Maybe. Like,
but I think,
you look at, first of all, I can hear all the listeners screaming from here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Yes, we will acknowledge. I do think it's worth noting that after they got caught with all the Connor Stallion stuff, then they got into the toughest part of their schedule and they ran the table. So credit to them. That was clearly a good team. They were not a mirage. They're not purely a product of their cheating, but it does appear like it's relatively likely that they were engaged in some systematic, unethical behavior that gave them a decided edge over the course of multiple seasons. And, you'd have to be a little naive to match up when they supposedly started the elaborate spying operation, and then you match that up against the timetable of their win-loss record. Like, again, I'm not going to say that they didn't have a little, a little under the table help, but what they also had was, despite whatever you may think of Jim Harbaugh, that guy can clearly coach. Everywhere he has gone, he has very quickly engineered a turnaround in college and the pros. And, I always think the best coaches, they're flexible enough to adapt to, if they have a roster where a player has a certain skill set and it doesn't exactly fit their system, they figure out a way to adapt. But they've got a philosophy, like an overarching philosophy of how they succeed. And ideally, especially in college, I think you want to match that to the institutional culture. And that's what Michigan had. They had in Harbaugh a guy who was an excellent coach, knew exactly the kind of player he wanted to win with. It fit with the overall culture of Michigan, which he knew very well because he grew up inside the program and he played there. And it was like a perfect alignment of all of those things. And I think getting to that point, like getting to what Georgia has with Kirby Smart or what Michigan enjoyed with Jim Harbaugh, with or without the assistance of Connor Stallions and his spy ring, I do think that is so rare. It's probably not realistic for any college football program that fancies itself national title contender to say, well, I just want to replicate that. It was like, that's that's the black swan. That's the unicorn. Like, what you've got to be doing is looking around at, a much better model, I think is the one you mentioned, is how did Dabo take Clemson from where it was to a spot in the elite that it enjoyed for a good decade or so. And, this is going to be a really important season for them in terms of whether or not they stay in that conversation. But, I look at Alabama and I just think Saban, they broke the mold when they make that guy. Like, nobody is going to coach the way Nick Saban can. I look at Georgia and I look at Michigan, and I think that was just a once or twice in a generation alignment of the hometown boy comes home at just the right time and everything else lines up and you catch lightning in a bottle. Most of these, the alum comes back to campus to great fanfare and more like Brady Hoke or Scott Frost than Jim Harbaugh and Kirby Smart. So to me, I look at Clemson and I'm like, that's a program that just kind of clawed itself up. Oregon is another example. The only thing Oregon is missing is the ring, and they've been close a couple of times.
They have, yeah, and it'll be interesting. I will say there are so many things that I think are just going to be fascinating about the upcoming season, both just Penn State centric, but also from the national perspective. I'm really interested to see what Oklahoma and Texas in particular, but both of those programs do in the SEC. Both, starting with this upcoming season.
I think Oklahoma might actually be more interesting because Texas looks like they have a team that's built to contend even in the SEC.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, I think, if they don't get off to a good start, which they might not, that could be quicksand for them because I talked about the number of programs in the SEC who have the resources and the demand from their fan base to contend every single year. If Oklahoma falls back into that pack, especially as they're still seeming to try to recover from Lincoln Riley leaving town, like, man, they could drop down. They could be like 8th, 9th, 10th in the conference within the next few years. I think this is a really important season for Oklahoma.
I don't think there's any doubt. I think, as I've talked about it a lot, I think Ohio State and just how that actually shakes out will be interesting. Lincoln Riley and USC and, how they fare in the Big Ten. I think Oregon and how it fares in the Big Ten and what adjustments it does or doesn't make is going to be worth the watch in and of itself. Obviously, Alabama. And, does it just maintain the standard and it's right there? It doesn't matter. Or, is there an adjustment period there? I really thought when Meyer left, I thought that was Penn State's chance to pounce and make that Clemson-like move with Ohio State. And they just weren't able to. And that's largely a credit to Ryan Day. I mean, Ohio State had the brand and Ryan Day did nothing to harm that brand in any way, shape, or form. And so, again, I do think this will be, in some ways, even though I think it's his most talented team, I think this will be his most challenging season as a head coach.
Have you ever seen?
I'm curious to see how that plays out.
You must have. You've seen Remember the Titans, right?
Oh, yes.
You know the part where the guy comes to Coach Boone's house and lets him know at the first sign of trouble, they'll make a change. And he says, well, what do you mean the first sign of trouble? And the guy goes, well, if you lose a game. Some Ohio State booster, I think, had that conversation with Ryan Day.
I think that is
this offseason. It's crazy to think about. Like you talk about, there was no drop-off. I think he is potentially one loss away from losing his job.
Which is absolutely insane. I mean, and I think you're right. I don't disagree with you, but that is just I mean, when you just sit down and you really let that sink in, like that is
as an Eagles fan, I would not, had I found myself in that position, I would not hitch my wagon to the Chip Kelly star in that situation. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
So, at the end of the day, Penn State is not elite. I don't know how much of that you can ultimately pin on James Franklin. And I'm not even sure. I don't know that you can necessarily pin it on anything other than the difficulty and I guess the determination to become elite. And part of that is, again, I think at a school like Penn State, you don't want it. I don't want it to be just about winning. And I think for Penn State to make the move to consistently, again, I'm talking about being, out of a 5-year period, Penn State being in the Final Four 4 years, championship game 2 or 3 times, and winning a title or two. I don't think I want Penn State to do what it would need to do to be in that position. Again, I'm speaking only for me. I mean, would I love to see those results? Yes, obviously. But what I think you need to do to get there from where Penn State is right now, again, count me as somebody. I'm okay. Like, I want to see them win a national title. I think they can win a national title under James Franklin with the program kind of operating the way it is. But I think it is going to be one of those kind of lightning in a bottle scenarios that's going to have to play out. And while I don't want to overvalue the consistently winning 10 games, I just think way too many people are way too undervaluing that aspect of what James Franklin is doing with this program in this world of college football. And again, I would implore you to look at the resources Penn State is putting into the program. And I'm not calling for more. I want to be clear here. I am not calling for more resources, for additional money, for any of that. I think Penn State fans are about tapped out. I think that it is a very reasonable, bordering on an unreasonable commitment that Penn State has made to the football program. It is substantial, and it is. But I think the return on investment should be pretty consistently a top 10 team. Well, guess what you're getting? You're getting pretty consistently a top 10 team. That is okay. Now, what I like to see, maybe a breakthrough year once or twice, more often than we're getting. Yep, and I think that's going to come. I think having the 12-team format is going to give a program like Penn State and some of these other programs that are in that tier. Now you're going to have the opportunity. Hey, man, can we get a lucky break somewhere in a quarterfinal matchup where we knock off an Alabama team that might be better? That 86 Fiesta Bowl or 87 Fiesta Bowl that capped off the 86 season, that was, Miami had the better team, had the more talented team. Let me put it that way. But
no question.
They did not have the better team that night. Penn State came out, again, if they played again the next week and Jimmy Johnson had a chance to make the adjustments, as great as I think that coaching staff was and as great as that team was, if they had to play again a week or two later, Miami's going to figure out, all right, this is what we needed to do to win that game. So you're going to need that type of a scenario where it's like, man, we just need to put it together for this one game. And again, I think that can happen. And I
Do you
think
still
it's
ever have nightmares
likely.
about they decided to give the ball to Highsmith a few more times? Right? It was so close there. But I like that you invoked that team because I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, man, in general, the Penn State teams that have done the best have been the guys that are who, number one, they love Penn State. Like they get every great college football program. Like if you look at the list of college football programs that have 900 wins, there's very few of them, and we're one. If I were to do a survey of 1,000 college football fans, diehard fans, and give them those names, I'd say, okay, give me some words you associate with these programs. What's the personality of Michigan? What's the personality of Notre Dame? What's the personality of USC? People know what the identity of a program is.
Yep.
And so Penn State's one of those schools. We got our own distinct identity. So number one, we've got people who buy into that and who love it. And some of them, they just have, for one reason or another, they got a chip on their shoulder. And so we don't, even our teams, like you look at that 99 team that had the top 2 picks in the NFL draft, LeVar Arrington and Courtney Brown. I think you and I can both say we've been watching Penn State football a long time. I don't think we've ever seen a pair of talents on the same team like those two guys.
That's a fact.
That team lost 3 games. And then I think about the 05 team. I think about the 2016 team, that 86 national champion team. I think we ought to look at that and say, can we just start leveraging a market inefficiency of not just dominating our recruiting footprint, but which we do, but like there are a lot of guys that my co-host Brandon Noble would say, it's a word I can't say on the radio, but they got a word that begins with S and ends with T in their neck. And, I think about Bald Eagle. We talked about how do they keep cranking out baseball champions. Pennsylvania produces a lot of athletes like that. Who was one of the best running backs James Franklin has recruited after Saquon Barkley was Journey Brown, and he was an afterthought for a lot of the big recruiting agencies and a lot of the big schools, because even though you could look at his numbers and they popped off the page, it was like, small Pennsylvania school, I'm going to write them off. We can find those guys, and I think the Penn State's path to doing what you're describing, because I agree, we're not going to spend like the top 5 programs, and I don't really want us to either, is I think we got to get even a little bit better at going back to, man, we won a lot of games with Marcus Allen and Jason Kabinda and Grant Haley and Trace McSorley.
Yep.
Plus, Saquon Barkley and Chris Godwin and Deshaun Hamilton and Mike Gesicki. How can we find everybody knows who the 4- and 5-star top end recruits are. Everybody can tell you, there's Saquon Barkley, there's Mike Gesicki. They're not hard to find. How can we find more Kabindas and Haleys and Marcus Allens?
Yeah, and you're looking for that. The comparison I've been making is, in college basketball, there's the Kentuckys and the Dukes and the North Carolinas, and they're going to get more than their fair share of the elite talent and the guys that are there for a year or two. But where other programs can make their mark and why they can contend is you get 4 or 5 guys that come in together. You develop them for 4 or 5 years. They communicate without having to say a word. They know each other. And it's like, man, we've got something special now that we've been able to develop. And you can go compete against a team that's more talented, but just doesn't know the game, hasn't had a chance to play the game as long. No question, you need some 4- and 5-star talents. Also, no question that Alabama and Ohio State, and right now Georgia and Texas, I mean, there are some schools that are going to get more than anybody else. And Penn State, while it's going to get their share of 4 or 5, they're not going to get more than their share.
Yeah.
Not consistently, not year in and year out, not the way those programs are. They're just not.
You got to get some guys. You got to fill your roster out. Yes, you absolutely need stars, but then you got to fill your roster out. And for both on-field performance and locker room culture reasons, you got to get guys who it means something to bleed for Penn State. They're looking forward to that. And like I said, they got that chip on their shoulder that I want to stick it up the butt of every recruiting evaluator and every elite head coach who didn't want to rate me the way I deserved to be rated and didn't want to give me the scholarship offer I know that I deserved. So, again, to extend the example, everybody could tell you where to find Dan Connor and Paul Posluszny and Steph Wisniewski. We got all those guys, and then, we went out and we found Tim Shaw and Sean Lee and Rich Hornberger. That's what we need to do. You name any great Penn State team that we're still talking about 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, and it's that perfect combination. There are guys that you're like, man, he was not the most naturally gifted talent, but he was hard as nails, and that guy bled blue and white. And, every single team had guys like that. And more often than not, they were right in our backyard. Yep. Always.
Yep. And that chemistry component is just, again, that's going to be the recipe. It's going to have to be the recipe for Penn State to make that type of a run, at least in my humble opinion. We'll take a break here. We're back with a final wrap from Quaker Steak and Lube on this Thursday. It is the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food. Get to Quaker Steak Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes are back home June 18th and 19th. The Spikes take on the Williamsport Crosscutters, and you can enjoy the return of Walking Taco Tuesday. Get half-price walking tacos at the new salsa stand next to the Kids Zone. Then it's Glizzy and Wine Wednesday, presented by Seven Mountains Wine Cellars, with half-price country store brand hot dogs all game long and half-price wine from 5:30 to 7:30. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
We're back here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Pirates trying to rally here with 2 away in the top of the 9th. Key Brian Hayes does a single, and so Pirates are still alive here in St. Louis, trying to pull out
1-run game.
A late victory here. Yeah, down 4-3. Again, 2 away here in the top of the 9th, but now a runner aboard for the beloved Buccos. So we'll see how that finishes up. Again, earlier today, Bald Eagle Area's baseball team wins its 2nd straight state title, an 11-3 win in the AA championship game. And the win over Tri-Valley gives the Eagles, for the first time in program history, back-to-back state championships. An absolutely remarkable group of seniors, not just baseball players, just senior athletes. You look at what those guys did on the football field in particular, basketball court, wrestling mat, and baseball diamond. Just a remarkable group that came through Bald Eagle area. And congratulations to Jim Gardner and the Eagles program. Really special stuff when you're winning a state title, let alone back-to-back state championships. And again, PIAA state softball and baseball championships today and tomorrow on the Penn State campus. Also, boys volleyball state championship action on Saturday, as well as the lacrosse championships for PIAA over at Panzer Stadium on Saturday as well. So lots going on here with the high school sports on the Penn State campus as the Cardinals do pick up the victory. Doggone it. 4-3, and the Pirates lose 2 of 3 in St. Louis to start the road trip. They'll make the trip over to Denver tonight and open up a series against the Rockies tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's a tough 1-run loss to eat, man. The Buccos really could have used to pick that one up. But
yeah.
Long season.
Just stinks because it was a difference between, I get it, 4th or 5th place. But, yeah, you want to be in 4th. It beats the heck out of 5th, which is where the
and to your
Buccos
point,
now reside.
you look, PNC Park, when the fans are in attendance, is a really cool venue, and you just want to give people a reason to keep coming back through July and maybe even into August, right?
Yep, and I think that they have it now. I actually just read a story on I think it was The Athletic, talking about I'm not sure I buy it, but they were making the argument the Pirates actually might be buyers at the trade deadline this year. I'd love to see it. I'm not sure.
Objectively speaking,
Pittsburgh is going to be either, to be honest with you. I think they may be more of a, we're just standing pat. I don't think they're going to be in fire sale mode certainly here. But
no, I don't think so. They might just do nothing. Objectively speaking, I think it would be wise for them to buy because, again, I don't think much of the NL Central. I think that's a division where you could move a big distance relatively quickly with not a lot of effort. But, like I said at the top of the show, if you're a Pittsburgh fan, you've got plenty of justifiable reason for pessimism. You can't give this organization the benefit of the doubt at this point.
No, and that's the while I'd love to see it, this ownership group is not going to make a move to try to go, get them over the hump. They're just not.
We were talking about that little run they made. I think about 10 years ago now, right, where they made the wild card round a couple of times. When McCutcheon's first stint in Pittsburgh. Did they buy at the deadline either of those two seasons?
Yes, but not they
big.
Didn't go big.
Yeah,
I mean, they did not. And there were pieces there.
I was going to say there were deals they could have made that they left on the table. Right?
Yes, and it's like, and everybody, it's like, well, yeah, that's a small market. No. It's not. Like, you can go all in. You can push your chips in for that 1 year. And, just like we were talking about with Penn State, again, the Pirates aren't going to be an organization that over a 10-year period is going to be making 5 or 6 World Series appearances. But could they, everything aligns, and yes, then make that push, get that extra piece or two, and actually try to go win a World Series. It's just not, that ownership group is about trying to make money, not trying to win titles. And it is so frustrating as a Pirates fan because you could see, they are building toward what should be a championship team here in another year, probably 2 years. But they will. I can already see what's going to happen, and this is what's so frustrating. And I'm going to be a sucker, and I'll get caught up in it again too, because it's just what we do as fans. But it's like, oh man, they are. They're going to be really good in a couple of years, and they're going to be a contender, like a legitimate contender. And they're not going to go win a World Series because they're not going to make the big money move to go get a piece or two. And I get, by the way, that it doesn't guarantee. There are teams that have made those big money moves and it doesn't pay off. But at least you're telling your fan base what we're trying to do is go win a championship. They are not going to make that signal to the fan base because the fan base is going to be excited, me included. I'm guilty. It's like, oh man, we're in the postseason.
Yeah.
And, it is possible that you get everything aligns, you get a break or two. You could still go win a World Series, but the commitment to go win it is not there from the ownership group. They want to create exactly what they're doing, a team that can contend, make that run, pocket the money, and then fire sale, build it back up, and until they get an ownership group in there that actually wants to go win World Series, and that is the objective. This is going to be the cycle, and it's a painful cycle. Like you really don't want your team. It's like a once every 15 years you build to being a playoff team, and you're content with that from an ownership standpoint.
You don't want your team to be owned by a good businessman.
No,
generally,
no, you don't.
You want
you want it to be a
vain lunatic.
Yes. Yep. And even there, you got to, you don't want it to be Jerry Jones lunacy.
Yeah, look, I joke about that because, Jerry Jones lunacy got them the Lombardies, and then, and then he turned into Howard.
But was it really his lunacy, or was it Jimmy Johnson's lunacy? I know Switzer got his, but
I think so. I think it was, I think it was probably like initially it was his vanity and lunacy that got Jimmy Johnson there in the first place. But then it was also, his ego that fired Jimmy Johnson and probably cut that dynasty short.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad they only got
Amen.
But I mean, look, I understand. Like, you can't own a professional sports franchise as a bad businessman unless you're that guy who bought the Islanders with fake money. But like, look, I'm sure like Dan Snyder, that guy clearly knew how to make money somehow, right? Mark Cuban, that guy knows how to make money, but he's been a good owner for the Mavericks.
Yeah.
But you've got to have somebody who, like you said, views it as a passion project and cares about owning a winning team, not just owning a team.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I was telling Goon the other day. You talk about the Cowboys, now that the second generation of Joneses are taking over the operation. One of the reasons why they do not break the bank in the offseason, like they took a lot of flack this year for not being active in free agency, is because he views ownership of the Cowboys as basically like a novelty that allows him to open doors to business deals that are going to be profitable for the family's company. And so, he looks at it as, well, I can sink this money into real estate and energy and make that money back, or I can sink it into the team, which is already selling tickets and already gives me a luxury suite where I can entertain, whatever Saudi billionaire who's in town for the week. And, if I pay that salary to a player, it just disappears. So, I mean, you can't look at the team as a business venture and win. It almost never, ever, ever works.
Very true. Now, it has to be a passion, and you have to be, to some degree, a fan yourself. And it's like, I want to be part of a
I just watched a documentary this morning about how Jerry Reinsdorf fired Phil Jackson and got rid of Michael Jordan because he wanted to make money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You can't try to run your team as a profit-making venture and win. And the type who do, the Wayne Huizengas of the world, the minute they realize how much it costs to win, they can't fire sale fast enough.
Very true. Very, very true, and very sad for those of us that are stuck in such a circumstance.
So sorry, Buccos fans. I didn't mean to bring the temperature down in the room.
That is going to about wrap things up. Do want to mention for those listening on the radio, and Facebook too, but you can follow along at 987thefox.com. But on Sunday, Father's Day, we are going to have live coverage of the Lesser Lumber Football Classic. This year it is being played at State College's Memorial Field.
Oh, nice.
Todd and Norm Brown will have the call of that game. I'll have the honor of doing PA for that, so looking forward to it. Again, 5 o'clock kickoff at Memorial Field in State College on Sunday for the Lesser Lumber Football Classic. Our coverage will probably begin just a little bit before kickoff, maybe 5 minutes or so before the 5 o'clock kick. And also a hearty congratulations again going out to the Bald Eagle area baseball team. The Eagles winning back-to-back state titles. They got the job done today with an 11-3 win over Tri-Valley.
Yeah,
I
awesome.
believe we're going to have a guest or two from that Bald Eagle area team on our Let's Talk program tomorrow morning here as well on Sports Radio 98.7 The Fox. Good luck to the Deer Goon and LaSalle's baseball team as they go for a state championship up at Medler Field at Lebrano Park. Thank you, Dear Booch, for filling in for the Goon.
My pleasure.
Here this afternoon. And, folks, we hope you have an absolutely terrific weekend. We will be back on Tuesday with a brand new edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Until then, be good and be safe.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see ya in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA, signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes are back home June 18th and 19th. The Spikes take on the Williamsport Crosscutters, and you can enjoy the return of Walking Taco Tuesday. Get half-price walking tacos at the new salsa stand next to the Kids Zone. Then it's Glizzy and Wine Wednesday, presented by Seven Mountains Wine Cellars, with half-price country store brand hot dogs all game long and half-price wine from 5:30 to 7:30. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Habaker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Habaker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Habaker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The